Liz, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, is Brent Johnson with Todd Groundwater?
Yes, he is.
Okay, all right. I'll promote him as a panelist. I thought his
Okay.
name sounded familiar.
And also, Arden Wells and Iris Priesta will be joining from Todd Groundwater.
Oh, okay. I did see Iris here. Okay.
So I don't know if she wants to be promoted. She's not presenting today. She might just want to listen. It's up
I,
to her. You
you know
can.
what? I actually already clicked it. So if it sends her over, I don't have a way of canceling that. So if it
Okay,
sends her
okay,
over there, she's okay. She can just keep her camera off and keep her on mute.
okay. Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome.
Okay, welcome everybody. We're gonna go ahead and get started. The time is 1:31. It's starting 1 minute late here. Sorry about that. Time being 1:31, we'll call the October 11th, 2023 STRGBA GSA meeting to order. Welcome everybody. So is that you on the phone there with us,
Me.
Jennifer?
Yes, I'm here. I got dismissed, so I'm here.
All right, that's great. Glad to have you at the meeting here. So on the phone, we've got some participants. We've also got Liz here from Todd Groundwater and Arden Wells from Todd Groundwater. And then Brent Johnson's in the participant or panelists right now.
Brent is also with Todd Groundwater.
Okay, I know Brent Johnson here locally. So that's welcome, Brent. And then so the agencies here, we've got Ian Sather. Ian Sather, welcome. So from the city of Oakdale, City Mesto, we've got Miguel Alvarez here. City of Waterford, Mike Pitcock. From OID, myself, Eric Thorburn. From Stanislaus County, we've got Christy McKinnon. Did I miss anybody? Okay. All right, and we got a couple audience members here and some attendees on the phone, so welcome everybody. Okay, we'll jump into item number 1. I gotta get all my paperwork here in order. So business from the public, expected outcome here. So interested persons are welcome at this time to introduce any topic within the agency's jurisdiction. Matters presented under this heading may be discussed, but no action will be taken by the agency at this meeting. So we'll open it up to the public.
Before you do that, Eric, we're not seeing you on video. Is something wrong with the camera or?
It's just off right now.
Okay.
You didn't call us there.
There we go. Yeah. Won't be the first time. Okay, is that better?
Yes, we can see you.
Perfect. All right, so now opening up to the public for anything that's not on the agenda. There it is. Okay, seeing none, hearing none, seeing no hands raised, we'll move on to item number 2. So this is the meeting minutes of the August 9th meeting. And we've got a correction on there that I want to make a couple corrections here, edits to the meeting minutes myself, actually. So at the last meeting, item number 4 was the operating budget update. I don't want to have anybody confused when they look back at this. I think everybody here knew, but that was actually the 2024 proposed operating budget, not the 2023 operating budget update. So I want to make that clarification. And I believe I did so at the meeting, so I want to add that to the minutes there. I might just change those 2023 to 2024s. Additionally, the draft mooring well installation plan, I just want to clarify. I think I said this in the meeting, I don't have a video to look back at it, but when Christy asked about if there will be more wells on the west side of the subbasin after the data gaps are addressed, it shows here that I stated that non-district east and east are fewer wells, but in the west there are more wells available. I want to clarify that sentence and just show that in the non-district east and generally in the east, there are fewer existing wells available. In the west, there are more existing wells currently available. However, there will need to be more wells on the west side in order to address the current data gaps. So just with those minor modifications to the minutes, I'll entertain a motion or any other changes that anybody wants to make.
We need to add Timothy to the some attendees.
We got Miguel here.
Okay.
If we didn't have Miguel here, then.
Okay. Then I can make the motion.
Good.
Oh, you mean in the did we list? Yeah, we do list the public. No, we probably should make that addition too. That's a good point. I was thinking you were talking about the member agencies. Is Timothy your alternatives? One is the technical.
One's the
Okay,
yeah.
so yeah, let's list them under the other attendees. I would agree with that. Thank you, Christy. Anything else? Nope. I'll entertain a motion.
Make a move to accept the changes that was recommended and approve the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. A second.
I can second
All
that.
right, thanks. I'll take any comments from the public at this time on the meeting minutes. Hearing none, seeing no hands raised. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item number 3 is done. Item number 4. So this is the 2024 operating budget, but we need to amend it this time to provide further confusion. So what ended up happening was we got the RFP and RFQ processed with Todd Groundwater. If you look at the attachment, the 2024 operating budget, it's a little more clearly shown here. We have the operating expenses in the first column, the list of operating expenses, the 2023 budget listed there, and then the 2024 budget all the way to the right. Of note, the annual report is the second line item down. That was previously at the last meeting proposed as $150,000. That needs to be increased to $190,000 to reflect what was provided in the RFP RFQ. So the total ends up being increased from $216,500 to $256,500. So it's an increase per agency. If split 8 ways, 7 agencies plus the Tuolumne County GSA, that's an increase of $5,000 per agency. So at the bottom, we also added a couple notes there so that it's a little to provide some clarity for the agencies too, going back to their own individual boards. The first note reflects the 8th share of the cost for each agency when you include the Tuolumne County GSA. So Stanislaus County pays 2/8 of that, or a quarter of that, because they bill Tuolumne County independently. So each agency needs to count on an invoice for a total of $32,062.50. The second note also clarifies that, because it's a little confusing as well. Yeah, $32,062.50 is going to come in 2 different invoices. One of those invoices is going to be from the city of Modesto for the annual report operating expense. So that $190,000 item that goes to the city of Modesto because they have the contract with Todd Groundwater. The remaining, the balance of that, will come from the Modesto Irrigation District. So you're going to get 2 invoices totaling $32,062.50 for the year. That makes sense. Anybody have member agencies have any comments, questions on that? Good. Okay. I'll open it up for motion before I go out to the public. If everybody's okay with that.
I want to take public comments first.
I was going to take a motion then before we go to a vote, take public comment.
Okay.
The motion can always be amended.
Okay, move to approve this item.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Okay, we'll open it up to the public for public comment on the 2024 operating budget. Quiet group so far. All right, seeing none, hearing none, we'll proceed to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries. Item number 5, this is the draft cost distribution agreement for subsequent approval by each member agency. So this pertains to that $190,000 line item that we just talked about for the annual report. In addition, multiple years thereafter with Todd Groundwater. So that's the RFP RFQ. Do you want to provide any detail on this? This is the agreement with the cost share agreement with the city of Modesto. So we need to, our plan is to get approval from the GSA today, and then we would go back. We can take it back to our boards if we need to get approval from them. I'm assuming you do, boards, councils. And then you would have a sheet at the end that we would all sign and provide back to the city of Modesto so we can consolidate that, and then we'll get copies back. And I'm thinking you're going to go back to your council and get it approved as well in the meantime, correct?
Correct. And what we're doing on the cost sharing agreement, similar to what we did last time, where we hired Todd Groundwater for the GSP and one of the annual reports. On the same formula we used. What we're doing this time, we're trying to mimic it a little bit closer to the actual cost as we get them. So we took the budget and looked at the first couple of years we're doing annual reports, so we have a lower cost coming up front. And when we collect the money up front to pay for it as the invoices come in. And then when we get to the subsequent years, we start charging a little bit more as the GSP component enters the equation on top of the annual report. So we're trying to collect as we're spending it up front to mimic what we're going to be spending for that year. And once, if everybody's good with this, like Eric said, we'll have everybody take it to their respective boards or authorities for signature. We'll collect at the end the signature sheets from everybody, compile one final copy like we have in the past, and redistribute back to the group so everybody has a final copy as well.
This agreement's gonna cover all the way through 2028.
It's gonna take us through 6 annual reports and the GSP update. And so we're starting with our first annual report due April 1st, 2024. So we'll have 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and on that's the year we still collect, but I want to say we got 6 years of annual reports, so we'll have the April 1st, 2029 annual report should be in there.
We'll make sure it's covering what was shown in this.
Yeah, 6 years of annual report.
So the 2023 noted on there actually covers the 2024 annual report.
Yes.
The report that's due April 2024.
Yes.
Right. You guys probably want to hit the button on your mics too, so that they can hear you on the phone too. Should have mentioned that earlier. Always forget that. Make sure the button's popped up. Any other questions on this? Questions, concerns? Good. Okay. I'm not expecting a lot of questions, but we'll open it up to the public here. If you don't mind making a motion, then I'll come back to the public. Well, I got one question, so let's open it up to the public real quick right now. Kelly, you've got a question for us?
Well, not a question. I was raising my hand for public comment, so I can wait until you guys make your motion, and then I can provide my comment or wait, whatever's easier.
Go ahead. Right now, it's fine.
Okay, sure. So my name's Kelly Doyle. I'm from the law firm of Somex, Simmons and Dunn. I am just making a public comment on behalf of our client regarding this agreement. Specifically, our client feels that the current proposals requirements that all agencies share equally in the cost of the GSP update and annual reports doesn't feel quite equitable when you consider the majority of the work that needs to be done is a result of the fact that the NDE, the Northern District East area isn't sustainable. Our client feels that the cost should be allocated more proportionally to agencies on the east side of the basin versus allocating them on an even basis between all the agencies. And they just wanted to record that comment.
Thank you. So keep in mind, the annual report and the GSP would be required regardless of whether we were found to be in sustainable condition currently. But we have gotten comments and in our GSP, we talk about projects need to be required in specific areas. So up to this point, the projects that need to be done in the non-district east, for example, have been done or are proposed to be done at the expense of those non-district east. And that was kind of at least that's my understanding of the intent of the agency thus far. But thank you for the comment. Got another hand raised. Got Stacy.
Hi, thanks so much. Have you guys talked about dividing the cost on anything other than an equal basis for the reasons that were just stated?
We have not up to this point. We haven't had anything that was specifically that was needed in one area, but not any other areas of the basin yet, so I don't know that. I mean, at least my understanding, I'm not trying to speak for the whole group, but yeah, you guys can all chime in. But and there's no requirement to respond to these comments. I'm just trying to be helpful and have a good, candid conversation here. Up to this point, we haven't really had to get there because, like I said, we haven't had any projects or management actions that have been specifically as a result of, any mismanagement in any area or unsustainability condition in any specific area. So we haven't gotten there yet. That's the short answer.
Okay, and then I would just like to echo the comments that were previously made and the comments that I've made in the past that we do feel that there wouldn't be such a significant amount of work being done if the non-district east was sustainable. And so I would reiterate on behalf of my clients the request that costs not be divided equally in the future with respect to the anything that has to do with the GSP. And I guess that's it, and we'll see what happens in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments at this time? Okay, seeing no hands raised here or online, we'll move and entertain a motion. Let the record show that Jesse from MID is here as well. 148. Thanks, Eric. Welcome. We're in the process of taking action on the item number 5, the draft cost distribution agreement for subsequent approval by each of the member agencies.
Make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. No questions. I like it. You came prepared. All right. We'll open it up and give the public one more chance. If there's any other comments, questions from the public. Okay. With that, we will move to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Motion carries. Thank you. Discussion item. So this is the 2023 water year groundwater level analysis. There's a PowerPoint. The PowerPoint slides are included in the agenda. And Todd Groundwater is going to help us with this presentation. I think that's going to start with Liz.
Yes. Hi, Eric. Thank you. And thanks everyone for joining. My name is Liz Elliott with Todd Groundwater. Also on the panel are my teammates here at Todd, Brent Johnson and Arden Wells. And I am going to share my screen and get started. So, can you tell me?
Yep, we can see it.
You can see it and you can hear me? Okay, great. Well, I'll get started. So, yeah, as Eric said, we did an analysis of the groundwater levels that were measured during water year 2023. And I'd like to show you some draft results and discuss what they mean. So the agenda, I'm going to summarize these two events and then show you some draft results, including an analysis of the sustainable management criteria, as well as hydrographs. And so these draft results are going to be part of the next annual report, which is the 3rd GSP annual report, which is due April 1st, 2024. I'm going to then try to put these results in perspective for you and then end with a request for data for this annual report. So the water year 2023 GSP monitoring events, there were 2 of them, like there will be every year going into the future. And before I get into the details, in general, the GSA measures water levels in the spring and the fall. The objective of the fall event is to capture the low water levels, seasonal lows. And this event is usually happens after the irrigation season is over. The spring event, the objective is to capture the high seasonal groundwater levels. And these water levels are measured before irrigation season begins. So in water year 2023, water levels were measured in fall 2022. This was the second GSP monitoring event after the GSP was submitted, the first one being in the spring of 2022. And during the fall 2022 event, most of the water levels were measured either at the end of October or early November. The spring 2023 event was the third event. Most water levels were measured either end of February or early March. And during both of these events, groundwater elevations were measured in 59 representative monitoring wells. 2 representative monitoring wells, water levels were not measured in either event because of casing obstructions, and those were in monitoring wells Wood and Quisenberry. So before I start showing you some draft results, I just wanted to remind you about the definition of undesirable results. And this is the definition that was developed in the GSP. So for chronic lowering of groundwater levels, an undesirable result will occur when at least 1/3 of the representative monitoring wells exceed the MT for a principal aquifer in 3 consecutive fall monitoring events. For interconnected surface water, this will occur on one of the rivers when between 1/3 and 1/2 of the representative monitoring wells for that river exceed the MT in 3 consecutive fall events. And the reason why there's a range is because it's 33% on the Stanislaus and Tuolumne rivers and 50% on the San Joaquin. And it's 50% on the San Joaquin because we only have 2 wells in that monitoring network. So keep in mind again that this fall 2022 event is the first fall event that has occurred since the GSP was submitted. And this is a sort of a summary of the minimum threshold exceedances that occurred during water year 2023. On the left-hand side is a table that summarizes the chronic lowering of water levels, and on the right, interconnected surface water. So let's start on the left with chronic lowering of water levels. This is broken down by principal aquifer. So in the western upper principal aquifer, which is above the Corcoran clay in the west, during water year 2023, we only had 1 well that had water levels that were below the minimum threshold, and this happened during the fall event. In the spring, there were no wells that were below the MT. So this 6% is the percentage of wells that were below the MT, and it's highlighted green because it's below that threshold for counting towards undesirable results, which is 33%. In the western lower principal aquifer, there was only 1 well in water year 2023 that was below the MT, and that happened in the fall. There were none in the spring. And there are only 5 wells in this monitoring network, and I'll show you maps. So that's 20%, which is again below the 33% threshold. In the eastern principal aquifer during the fall event, over half the wells were below the MT. And then which is above that 33% threshold to count towards undesirable results. So this would count as the first of the 3 consecutive fall events that would potentially lead us to that. And then in the spring, we are at about 1/3 of the wells are below the MT. And then moving into interconnected surface water, you can see in the fall, along each of the rivers, we had over half of the wells were below the MT. And so these are all highlighted red because they are above that threshold for each river. And then in the spring, along the San Joaquin, both of the wells were below the MT. And then along the Stanislaus and Tuolumne rivers, about 1/4 of the wells were below the MT. So I also wanted to remind you about interim milestones. So when we developed the GSP, we developed interim milestones for the monitoring wells that were in 2 management areas, the Oakdale Irrigation District management area, as well as the non-district east. And these IMs were developed with the recognition that water level declines were occurring, were expected to continue until projects and management actions would kick in and cause recovery. And it was a recognition that this would take some time. So these interim milestones are 2027 sort of goals, I guess you could say, and provide sort of a glide path for the GSAs to allow for declining water levels and sort of kind of give the GSAs some time, again, in the recognition that projects and management actions take time to have an effect on water levels. So the good news is that there are no wells that have inner milestones where the water levels were below the inner milestones during water year 2023. For the chronic lowering of water level sustainability indicator, there are 14 wells with IMs. Water levels were above those. And for interconnected surface water, there were 5, and same water levels were above those. So now I'm going to show you some maps and hydrographs. So these maps summarize the MT exceedances that occurred in each principal aquifer and during both GSP monitoring events. The map you're looking at right here is the fall 2022 map for the Western Upper Principal Aquifer. And on all these maps, the green dots are wells whose water levels were above the MT, and the red dots are wells whose water levels were below the MT. So this is the fall 2022 map for the Western Upper Principal Aquifer, and there's only one well, Caton, close to the San Joaquin River, where the water level was below the MT. And none of these wells have IMs. Again, those IMs were just developed for the OID and non-district east management areas. Moving into the spring, same aquifer, there were no MT exceedances. All the wells had water levels that were above the MT. Now I'm going to show you a few hydrographs for the Western Upper Principal Aquifer. This is for Caton, that one well where we did have an MT exceedance in the fall. And so I've circled the 2 data points that were measured during water year 2023. This is the fall right here, this low point, fall 2022, and then there was a rebound in the spring. So water level declined in the fall and rebounded in the spring, approximately over 10 feet. What's interesting about this well is when we developed the GSP, the definition of the minimum threshold was the historic low groundwater level. But in this case, the historic low was this 1994 level, which seemed anomalously low. So you can see most of the groundwater levels that were measured in this well were pretty stable through time. And then we had this one level in 94 that was a lot lower than the others. So we thought that this was either due to pumping very close to this well, or maybe there was pumping in this well and there was just not enough time for recovery to happen before the water level was measured. But what we're seeing here in the fall of 2022 is a very similar water level and a very similar pattern, which makes us think again that maybe this fall 2022 water level was lower because of nearby pumping, or maybe not enough time was allowed for recovery to happen in this well before the water level was measured. But in any case, this was the only well with an MT exceedance in the Western Upper Principal Aquifer during this water year. This is a hydrograph for Van Buren, which is located in the center of this aquifer. Water levels are above the MT during this water year. We see a decline in the fall and a rise in the spring. This pattern is very similar to what we're seeing in the rest of the wells in the Western Upper Principal Aquifer, and kind of what you'd expect. Now moving to the Western Lower Principal Aquifer. This is the aquifer that's below the Corcoran clay. So you can see on this map, there are only 5 wells in this monitoring network at this point. This is a known data gap that was identified during GSP preparation, and the GSA is aware of this, and there's been some work to identify potential future monitoring well locations that would help to fill this data gap. Near the Tuolumne River, that was below the MT. All the others were above. Are you able to hear me? I'm just getting an unstable reading.
Yeah, you broke up just a little bit, but we're good.
Okay. If that okay. Let me know if that happens again. Sorry. And then in the spring, all 5 of the wells were above the MT, and there were no again, there are no interim milestones in the Western Lower Principal Aquifer. So a couple of hydrographs. This is a hydrograph for well MRWA3. This was a USGS well. It was installed in the 2000s by the USGS, monitored for several years by the USGS, and then it was inaccessible. But about a year and a half ago, the GSA was able to get an agreement from the survey to access this well. So this well is now part of our monitoring network. And what we're seeing is that in the fall 2022, water levels declined, and then we had a rebound of about 7 feet. During both of these events during water year 2023, we're above the MT. Now, moving to the east within this aquifer is a monitoring well that was installed within the city of Modesto a few years ago. And what we're seeing in this well, and also is what we're seeing in all of these wells that are sort of on the edge of the aquifer in the east here, eastern part of the western lower principal aquifer, is that during water year 2023, we're seeing a rise, a continuous rise. So this low point here is spring 2022. And then this next point is fall 2022, and the next is spring 2023. So throughout water year 2023, we're seeing a steady rise, whereas we would expect to see kind of a decline in the fall and a rise in the spring. And again, we're seeing a similar pattern at all of these wells that are along the edge of this aquifer. We're not exactly sure why this is occurring yet. One theory is that it's because the city may be pumping less from the lower aquifer. Another theory is that the city may, we may be seeing the effects of recharge projects that have been conducted in the city. We'll know more when we take a look at the production data that we're collecting as part of the annual report. So we'll have a better idea when we start preparing the annual report of why this might be happening. But it's a good trend. And now we're moving to the eastern principal aquifer. So this is the fall 2022 map. And over half of the representative monitoring wells in the fall were below the MT. There are 16 wells. Again, the 16 wells are above the MT. Those are the green dots. And there are 21 wells that are below the MT. Those are the red dots. And there were 2 wells that were not monitored. And if you look at the map, you can kind of see that the green dots, or the wells with water levels that are above the MT, are kind of clustered in the western part of this aquifer. But as you move east, the concentration of red dots increases. So there are more MT exceedances as you move east, as you can see. Then looking at the spring, about a third of the wells are below the MT. There are 25 wells that are above, 12 below, 2 not monitored. And still you're seeing, the sort of concentration of green dots kind of in the western part of this aquifer. And as you move east, you're seeing more and more red dots, more MT exceedances. And here are a few hydrographs. So this is Pearly, which is located kind of in the western part of the eastern principal aquifer. And we're seeing a water level decline in the fall and then a rebound in the spring, which is, again, a typical pattern that we're seeing throughout the subbasin. And water year 2023 water levels in this well are between the MT and the MO. So we're above the MT here. Moving slightly east, this is Bentley OID2. There's a similar pattern where we have a decline in the fall, rise again in the spring. Water levels, both of these water levels in water year 2023 are below the MT, but you can see the spring event is just barely below the MT, or very close. And we do have a number of wells during water year 2023 where there are MT exceedances, but they are just barely below the MT. But if you look at sort of the overall trend in this well, you can see that water levels have been sort of on a downward trend, declining since about 2005 when measurements were first made. And moving further to the east, this is the Paulsell 1 OID 11 well. And these last water year the water year 2023 water levels are below the MT. Water levels, as you can see, are just continuously declining. These eastern wells have the highest rates of water level declines. And in this case, we see pretty steady decrease since about 2008, which is right here. So in the last 16 years or so, 15 years, pretty steady decline. So I wanted to show you, kind of take a little bit of a closer look at what's happening in the very eastern part of the eastern principal aquifer. So this well right here at Paul Cell 1 is the hydrograph that I just showed you. But I also wanted to show you hydrographs for the surrounding wells. So this is MW10, which hydrograph here, MW7, which is here, MW8, which is here, and that Paul Cell hydrograph, which I just showed you over here. And this other Paul Cell well, which is next to Paul Cell 1, Paul Cell 2, has a very similar pattern to Paul Cell 1. So I'm only showing you one of these two. But all of these wells that I'm showing you are screened in the Merton Formation. And starting at this well, MW10, during water year 2023, we have a decline in the fall and a rebound in the spring. And this is sort of, this pattern is consistent with most of the subbasin and sort of what you'd expect. But then when you move up slightly to the east to MW7, which is this hydrograph here, you see a decline in the fall, and then in the spring, even more of a decline. Not much, but there's no rebound there. It continues to decline. And then looking at this Paul Cell well, which I already showed you, you also see just continuous decline in water year 2023. And then MW8, which is the furthest east, we actually have an increase in the fall and a decrease in the spring, which is a little bit counterintuitive. Because again, the spring 2023 monitoring event occurred a few weeks before the irrigation season began. So you wouldn't expect there to be pumping or to see large stresses on the aquifer in this area. But these hydrographs tell a different story. It seems like there is a stress on the Merton Formation that is occurring somewhere east of MW10 and is affecting all of these wells, 7, Paul Cell 1, 2, and 8. And talking with some of the GSA member agencies about this, one theory is that it could be from pumping from frost protection that is occurring during the winter months when it was cold, but we don't know for sure. So moving on, this is the map for interconnected surface water in the fall of 2022. Along the San Joaquin River, one of the 2 wells is below the MT. Along the Stanislaus, 6 of the 8 wells are below the MT. And along the Tuolumne, 4 of the 9 wells are below the MT, and 1 well was not measured. In the spring, both wells along the San Joaquin are above the MT. We only have 2 wells that are below the MT along the Stanislaus, and 2 that are below the MT along the Tuolumne. And here are a couple of hydrographs. This is Canfield along the San Joaquin River, where during water year 2023, water levels were relatively stable and then increased in the spring. We're above the MT here. And then this is Riverbank OID 13 along the Stanislaus, where we have a water level decline in the fall and a rise in the spring. Pretty typical pattern that we're seeing throughout the subbasin. And this fall 2022 water level is the first one that has been below the MT, but we've recovered nicely here. And then this is lateral 1 along the Tuolumne. Similar pattern. We have a decline during the fall, slightly below the MT, and then a recovery, rebounded above the MT. So what does this all mean? I'll try to put these results in perspective. So the fall 2022 monitoring event occurred after 2 consecutive critically dry years, water year 2021 and 2022. So these observed water level declines that we're seeing in the fall are not surprising. The fall event is the first fall event that counts towards undesirable results. So please keep in mind that undesirable results have not been triggered. And again, the definition of undesirable results depends on 3 consecutive fall events for chronic lowering of groundwater and for interconnected surface water. During water year 2023, we don't have any water levels that are below the IMs, but we need to keep an eye on the number of wells that have MT exceedances, especially in the eastern principal aquifer and along the river boundaries. And the GSA is poised to begin the next monitoring event in early November. And after the irrigation season is over. And we will then be looking at the data and comparing them to the sustainable management criteria to see where we're at. So I'd like to end just by requesting data for the next annual report. We have not yet started putting the report together, although these analyses that I've showed you will be in the report. But as part of the third annual report, we are going to need similar data that you have provided and for the past 2 annual reports. It's going to be the surface water operations for Modesto Irrigation District and Oakdale Irrigation District, which will include inflows for the Tuolumne and Stanislaus rivers, surface water diversions, surface water deliveries, Modesto Reservoir seepage, canal seepage losses, and operational spills and return flow. We are also interested in any construction information of any new agency operated production wells that have started within the last water year. And we'd also really like groundwater level data that have been measured since the spring event, as well as groundwater production data for the entire water year. And we'll need that for all of the member agencies, MID, OID, and the cities of Modesto, Riverbank, Oakdale, and Waterford. And so we will be sending out a more formal data request to all the member agencies soon, but we would really like this data by the end of December. As in past years, and with the GSP, we'll be working with our teaming partner, Woodard and Curran, on this annual report. They will be updating the model through water year 2023, and the sooner that we can get the data, the sooner they can start with their model update. So that is all I have. So thank you so much, and please let me know if you have any questions.
Question.
Yeah.
Liz, could you further clarify the connections and differences between undesirable results and the interim milestones, and then how we should plan to respond to either when they happen?
Sure. So the undesirable results is based on the MT exceedances. So the MT is really our compliance point. So the MTs are what we are keeping our eye most closely on. The IMs are just sort of some wiggle room that we have, that we've told DWR that we are expecting. We're expecting water levels to decline in these wells in the next few years, and this is sort of what the limit of what we would expect based on past trends. But again, I think the MT is the compliance point that we're going to be keeping our eye closest on.
Thank you.
So those wells that we had interim milestones that were dropping below the minimum thresholds, they still count towards the 33%
Yes.
in those 3 consecutive years.
Yeah.
And so that was fall 2022.
Right.
So we're now in fall 2023. So this could be the 2nd consecutive year. And our 3rd consecutive year could be a year from now, essentially.
It could be. Yes. Yes, this is the 2nd fall event coming up. Yeah, so that's why I think we we would love to dig into the data as soon as it's measured, so that we can give you an idea of where you're at as soon as possible.
And we had talked at our last TAC planning meeting that we're going to look at this fall data early this year. Any other questions, comments from member agencies on this? Nope. Okay, open it up to the public. Scott, you're here. You had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
You want to grab a mic, if you don't mind. Just for the people on the phone. Sorry, Scott.
I'm just curious that you had mentioned you were going to start data collection in November. Given the lateness of the growing season this year at harvest, are we sure we're going to miss the pumping season completely?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we talked about early November, but we have a little leeway there according to our GSP. So we had talked as agencies through email, and we're planning on the 2nd week of November. So we'll be pulling water at the end of October. Would expect it maybe a little bit of pumping at the end there, but hopefully that'll give us a little enough room. If we think we could push it back farther too, depending on what we see. But That's a good question. Anybody else here in the room? Okay, Stacy, you're on the phone.
Hi, thank you. So question about 2027, and I guess really potentially next year. So we have, if I'm understanding correctly, 2 of the 3 events have occurred. So what happens next year if there's another event that occurs with these negative test results or negative monitoring results? When does the GSA start requiring action of the non-district east?
That's a good question. We need to, knowing this data now, we'll be coming back and thinking about that. We haven't hit the third, technically we haven't hit the second yet. We'll see what happens with this fall, but based on the results we're seeing, I wouldn't be surprised if we hit the second here this fall when we take the readings. So that's one of the reasons we want to push up the presentation of this fall data, so we know sooner than later what the results are of that, and we kind of reinforce the fact that we're getting close, and then we'll have to take action. And I don't know what that action is, but we'll have to have those discussions.
And those discussions would take place in a meeting like this?
They'll take place in public. How about that?
Okay,
they'll take place probably in a combination. I would think that we might have some public meetings outside of this, workshops, things like that, that also discuss those results. And we had that first workshop earlier this year. We're talking about having another one at some point here too. So this will be kind of more information we'll want to present to that group. And the last workshop we had earlier this year was focused on that non-district east group. So might be a good spot it's likely a good spot to present these same results sooner than later.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep. Any other questions or comments on the phone? Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Nice job on that. Okay, item number 7, the next meeting. So the next regularly scheduled meeting will be on November 8th. And that will be at 1:30 here at Oakdale Irrigation District, with also an option available for public attendance by Zoom. Questions, comments on that? Okay, questions, comments on that? Item number 7, the next meeting from the public. Okay, item number 8, items too late for the agenda, so I'll start this if you don't mind. Just a couple updates. The final Sigma Round 2 funding awards list was posted. The OID projects is still proposed to be awarded just under 14.4 million for the Paul Cell lateral expansion project. So we're excited about that. We have submitted our formal written acceptance of the funding contingent upon getting a final agreement signed. We need to get a resolution approved by our board. We'll do that at our meeting, the OID meeting in November. We're hoping to get a contract or agreement in place by the end of the year, and moving forward with getting the design done as soon as possible thereafter. So that's good news. I have note for, Jesse, do you want to provide an update on the long-term MID water replenishment program?
Sure.
Yep, perfect. Yep.
Sure. So we are currently, the GRP long-term program was approved by the board of directors. We're now in the CEQA process, and so we're working with our consultant to go through that. Hopefully we'll have a determination on what path we're going on. We have a couple options, but currently in the CEQA process. As soon as we complete that process, the next step would be to present that to the board and give an update.
Excellent. Thank you. So for OID's program, we had takers this year, and then we've got a number of turnouts going in. So the acreage in our program that will be taking water, ideally, if we can get these turnouts, new delivery points installed over the winter, we nearly double the acreage that would be able to take water next year. So we're looking forward to that as well. Liz, DWR had requested a data request from they had a data request from us to update their statewide groundwater model. I know that was going to be quite extensive. Do you mind elaborating on kind of what that request was and the timeline for that?
Sure. Yes. DWR is so they developed the statewide or valley-wide groundwater model that was used for many GSPs, including this one. And so they are requesting, well, I should back up. During development of this GSP, the model from DWR was refined in our subbasin with local data and improved. And so what DWR is asking is for the model information that was used for this refined model for the GSP, because what they would like to do is they would like to update their statewide model with all of this refined information from the various subbasins throughout California. So they sent out an email a couple months ago, I think already, requesting these model files. Woodard and Curran, who again, our teaming partner who did the modeling, did model development and the updates for the annual report, is in the process of preparing these files. They are actually working with DWR right now to figure out the best file formats and ways to get DWR this data. Woodard and Curran was involved in a lot of models, so they've been getting a lot of these requests. So again, they're working with DWR right now to try to figure out exactly what DWR wants and what formats they want. So once they get that figured out, they will be providing DWR with the specific modeling files for the Modesto model that was developed for the GSP. So that's underway.
Thanks, Liz.
Sure.
I got an email from Amanda. I'm gonna butcher her last name. Amanda from DWR. And she was pleased to announce that Dimitri Lee is our new basin point of contact for the Modesto subbasin. I don't see him on the phone unless he's the number that doesn't have a name to it. But so everybody's aware we have a new point of contact for DWR. So welcome, Dimitri. Look forward to working with him. Cash-in data collection. We're scheduled for the second week in November. That's tentative, but I think it's a good date, given the fact that we're kind of running late on harvest and everything. So we'll get that data collected, groundwater data collected. And then just a reminder here coming up over the next few months too, DWR, their feedback on our GSP and hopefully approval or deficiencies otherwise, that's due by the end of January 2024. So we are hoping to hear back from them soon. A lot going on, a lot to get working on. And then in the meantime, hopefully Christy and I and the group can talk about getting a workshop put together to help continue to educate and discuss the situation with the non-district east and just the basin overall. So the public looks like I'll give you one more opportunity to provide any feedback on anything that's on the agenda or questions on the stuff that I just generally went over. But first, I want to give the member agencies an opportunity if there's anything else they want to provide feedback on, anything want to discuss real quick. No? Okay. Juan, you have your hand up? Go ahead, Juan. You there, Juan? Nope. Looks like I think we're having we're having issues hearing you. You're not on mute, but your hand's down, so maybe that was a false raise. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for attending. We will hopefully see you in November or soon thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you.